Eugene was alone in the room when the view returned. Only he had turned toward the window and was staring through it. No matter how I moved the camera, I could not see what was beyond the window. Since the feed had no audio, I could not tell if he was hearing anything. When I zoomed out, I noticed a toolbox had been placed just inside the cafeteria, near the door on the left. Eugene walked backwards towards the door, his eyes never leaving the window. He squatted and picked up the toolbox, then walked to a table and set the box down. He opened it and pulled out a hacksaw. What I saw next would never leave me. My doubts about this place shifted. Whatever it was real. These people were not actors. Eugene kept his eyes on the window, but he took his right pointer finger and laid it flat on the table, and the rest of his hand hanging free. He picked up his foot and pressed it onto his finger, locking it into place. He took the hacksaw with his left hand and went to work, severing the trapped finger in a dozen strokes. With his right hand free, he absently wiped a blood streak on his thigh before reaching back into the toolbox and pulled out a cordless drill. Still enthralled by whatever was outside the window, Eugene laid his left forearm on the table, his left hand free at the edge, his palm up. Using his middle finger to activate the drill, Eugene placed the bit in the middle of his palm. The drill spun to life, easily chewing through his palm and driving through the other side. He pulled the drill free and held his hand up to the window, the fresh wound sending blood running down his palm and onto the floor. Eugene put the severed finger into his pocket, then knelt before the window, his eyes never leaving it. The door on the left opened, and two prisoners walked in. One was a big guy I once called Muscles. The other was a woman I didn't recognize, her ponytail swaying as she walked toward Eugene. Neither of them looked out the window. They walked forward with a purpose, and when they got to Eugene, the woman returned the drill and hacksaw to the toolbox. Then she pulled out a claw hammer and handed it to Muscles. He stood before Eugene with a two-handed grip on the hammer. He raised it above his head, and he was about to bring it down when I snapped out of my daze and sprang into action. I had to try something, so I moved the camera to focus on Muscles and pushed the button. The screen didn't change, but the woman with the ponytail turned her head toward me and looked into the camera. She reached into Eugene's pocket and pulled out his severed finger. She waved it at me, a naughty, naughty gesture, matching the twisted glee in her eyes. Muscles brought the hammer down, hard. Eugene crumpled to the floor, twitching for a few seconds before lying still. He was dead. Muscles and the woman picked up Eugene's body and pushed it into the tray return. The door on the left opened, and the trustee pushed a mop and bucket into the room. I couldn't make out her face. It was pixelated into a blur. Muscles put the hammer back into the toolbox. Then he and the woman left, taking the toolbox with them. The trustee cleaned the cafeteria methodically. When she left, I was looking at a spotless room. I thought this would be when the view from the camera would normally resume, if Mitty hadn't shown me how to use the new button. The lights went dim for a few hours. Nothing happened, but I watched the screen anyway. I had to know what would happen next. My shift ended, and a countdown timer appeared to show I had 6 hours before my next tour at the prison. I stood and walked towards the kitchen to pick up my usual routine. I couldn't find any tea bags. I looked high and low, but I had run out. I also couldn't find any cat food. I checked twice, but no dice. My phone rang, and I walked over to see it was coming from an unlisted number. Must have been another pep talk from the warden to make me feel comfortable with the ritual execution of helpless prisoners. I didn't answer it. I waited for the phone to stop ringing. Then I checked it to see dozens of missed calls and texts. I started to check those messages, but I was interrupted by a violent knocking on my door. The warden must have taken offense to me ignoring him, and he probably sent a goon squad to whisk me away to his prison. I hid behind my couch just as the door crashed open. I heard the heavy fall of boots on the floor as they searched my apartment. I held my breath, waiting to be caught and dragged away. They called out to me, calling me by name. When I was a kid, I once hid from my dad after I shot a squirrel with a pellet gun and knocked it out of a tree. It fell about a dozen feet before crashing onto the sidewalk. I thought I had killed it. My dad had seen me, and he called out to me. I thought he was mad, so I ran off. He searched the woods behind our apartment for hours, but he never found me. Every time he got close, I closed my eyes and held my breath, a childish ward against consequences. Here I was, fully grown, but falling back on juvenile habits. This time, the outcome would be worse than being grounded for a week and receiving a lecture on kindness to those who are weaker. I heard another voice from the door.
Sorry for calling the police. I was worried when I couldn't reach you.
It was Shayna. I leapt up from behind the couch and waved at her. She jumped back, then looked over at the cops and said,
Hey, officers, over here.
The police turned and walked towards me, but they kept their distance. I heard one of them call for an ambulance, telling the dispatcher they had a suspected mental health crisis. I looked at Shayna and asked her what was wrong. I told her I had just been busy for a couple days.
Couple of days? No one's heard from you in weeks. Where have you been? What is wrong with you?
I was stunned. I opened my mouth to speak, but she cut me off.
Where's Mitty?
I didn't know.
When was the last time you showered?
I didn't know.
When was the last time you ate?
I didn't know. The paramedics arrived and evaluated me. They wanted to take me to the hospital, but I refused. I told them I was tired and hungry, and I needed to clean up, but I was fine. So was Mitty. He was hiding under my bed, and he was also hungry, but he was fine. I found him after the responders left. Shayna stayed behind to order food and make sure we both ate. While waiting for the delivery driver, I took a shower. I had been camping over a long weekend a few times, and I remember how good a real shower felt after spending a couple days getting grimy. This felt better. I felt like I was cleaning more than just my body. When I got out of the shower, I found Shayna touching my work computer.
What's wrong with this thing? Where's the rest of the keyboard?
I told her I didn't know, and I didn't think I could handle more keys. When the food arrived, we ate in silence. I devoured my meal, and I ended up eating most of Shayna's too. Mitty got a nice piece of fish, and he had bits of my chicken too. When we were finished with our food, I told Shayna everything. The warden, the prison, the button, the money. She didn't fully believe me, but she thought I believed what I was saying. She asked,
Well, what do you want to do?
I told her I wanted to get off this crazy train. She nodded, then picked up the laptop and smashed it on my desk. I couldn't believe it. Just like that, I was free. The police had kicked in my door, but I hadn't set the deadbolt, so it still worked when I tried to lock it. We left the apartment, and Shayna dropped the computer down the garbage chute on our way out. We walked to the corner store to stock up on cat food, tea, and snacks. We got back to the apartment, and my phone rang. It was an unlisted number. I didn't want to touch the phone, so Shayna picked it up.
Whatever you're selling, we're not buying. Kindly fuck off,
she said. Her face changed, a look of confusion washing over her. Then she held out the phone and said,
It's for you.
I put the phone to my ear. It was the warden.
Don't bother apologizing. You really shit the bed this time, sport.
I told him I didn't care. I told him I quit.
When did you become a partner in this firm? I don't recall authorizing you to bring in outside personnel or to discuss the workings of our operation. You've got 1 hour until your next shift. Open the door and take your new workstation.
He disconnected the phone, and I walked to the door and opened it, not surprised to see a cardboard box. I took it back inside. Shayna opened it for me, my hands too shaky to safely handle the knife. Inside the box was a computer, no cash this time. I guess I lost out on my bonus. This computer had a new button, a fourth one. There was another sticky note with a doodle. The note read, "You should see everything, even the deep tracks." My heart sank. I asked Shayna if she'd heard from my dad. I called him, but the phone went straight to voicemail. Shayna volunteered to drive to his house to check on him. I was afraid to go, unsure how much my employers could see, unsure how to get out of this mess without involving either of them, or without involving them any further. When she left, my phone rang again, the number unlisted. I answered the phone, afraid further angering the warden.
I take it you've already selected your replacement, and you've been training her on the machine?
It was Miss Tucker, the human resources civilian. I told her that Shayna wasn't a part of this, and that I wanted to keep my position.
That's nice, but you have tallied a number of violations with your little outburst. I'm not sure you can continue in your current position without some atonement of your own. Do you agree?
I told her I would agree to anything that keeps Shayna out of this mess.
A wise move.
Miss Tucker said.
Otherwise, she'd be watching the camera, and you'd be replacing our recently released guest. Let me check my records and see what I can do for you.
She disconnected the call. I powered on the workstation and saw that I had less than a minute before my next shift. I called Shayna. She answered and said,
I'm knocking and ringing the bell, but your dad isn't coming to the door. Do you think he's...
The call disconnected, and my screen lit up. My next shift had started. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more or simply like to support my channel, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps out. Until next time.